Ladies and gentlemen, in front of you is a panel of 5 people with an accumulated construction industry experience of plus minus 130 years. And at the pace and speed of what things happen in the Middle East, we can double that. Our session today is on the future of construction and digitalization. And the topic is fiction or future. And I've many times said it wrong and said fiction or friction, because when it comes to change, friction does come with that. But we are sitting here with extremely knowledgeable people, and it's a great honor to share the stage with you today.
Thank you.
In ISG, we have our group digital director, Jack Dearlove. What a nice surname. And he published an article the other day on 7 steps for a company to follow if they want to implement digitalization. Now, when we're in the Middle East, we jump to number 7 and we go. One of his points, one of his steps is the cheat code. And I like that because I know any millennial here would know. We typed in Rosebud, semicolon, exclamation mark, and Sims to get the cheat code to build the houses that we wanted to. And the cheat code is align yourself with the people who are already where you want to be. It's not always everything because you do want to win, but on topics and something like this where someone next to you, someone around you knows more than you, align yourself with that partner. And that is what this panel is today. They are partners and they are already where you want to be if you are looking to jump into the future. We are facing massive challenges with the speed at what things happen. Everything is online, we are all accessible through phones, media, social media, emails. If a thought comes up, it had to be done yesterday. So to look at these challenges, we've got a deck of questions, and I'm going to address these to each of the panelists as we go along. The first and the second question, we've decided to attribute to Alison Wicks and Martin Angus. Question 1, breaking old habits and adopting a digital-first strategy to project design and delivery, and 2, skilling up staff to take advantage of modern design and delivery technology. Alison Wicks is the founder of Qualitas and also the director of quality integration at her company, and she has also been voted in as vice chair for CIOB recently. Martin Angus is digital lead for AECOM. Between the two of them, they are quality and specification masters. Alison has been in the UAE for 13 years, and she trains and supports companies, staff, CEOs, right through down to labor in training on new and integrated and forward-thinking progress, quality. It's phenomenal what you have done.
Thank you.
She also was the quality manager for the facade on Museum of the Future. I'm getting this. And we've driven past it so many times, and it's a beautiful building. If you don't know, it's the first building ever that's got carbon fiber on its facade. Every single panel had to be measured at different parameters and is unique. You can imagine what they had to do there. It couldn't have been done all manually, but digitally.
It was very tough, actually. And I think, transitioning into digital is never easy. You do face a lot of resistance along the way. We've noticed that one size doesn't fit all, so you've got to have a variety of means to help implement. I remember a time when I was actually locked in a site office by the site team, and this is because they were resistant against a new management strategy that had been implemented. And it was through no fault of my own, but because the organisation didn't communicate the requirements clearly with them and didn't involve all personnel in the process, it made it very difficult for them to embrace this new technology and new development. So I think it's really, really important that people are involved in the process, they're fully engaged and they're communicated to. Otherwise, unfortunately, through fear, I think we have the same sayings. We haven't got time. We've always done it this way. And I think we have to learn to break through those barriers and not take them on board. And I think there is a lot of fear, but working with people and involving them in the process really does help along the way.
Absolutely. I mean, good morning, everybody. It's very nice to see people not
Good morning.
in teams. Yeah, so the actual human beings, it's very nice to see everybody. I thought this morning's presentation was amazing. Thank you very much for doing that one. We live in a time where things have never been as fast, which is incredibly interesting because that means things will never be this slow again. Our industry is transforming and it offers us massive opportunities. And it offers us massive opportunities to grow as well, as people and as an industry. A lot of times when we sort of look at solutions that we're trying to implement, we get a lack of connectivity. And that lack of connectivity comes because we don't sit down and ask the fundamental questions. What problem am I trying to solve? Who am I trying to solve it for? And who will benefit? And a lot of that needs to tumble down into everybody's digital strategies. A lot of our strategies need to be understood at a broader term because they're not just for a very siloed community. So as we saw from the presentation earlier on, there's a lot of talk around connectivity. And connectivity is super important. As we look to transform our industry and the world, what we need to understand is how much change are we willing to make? That's a massive, massive question. That will then help you make a decision around what level of digitization are we going to look at? Because you can digitize, you can make atoms turn into bits, or you can digitalize. And that is really what we're talking about today. So what we're trying to look at now is solutions where we have technology at the core of decision making, as opposed to edge decisions with technology bolted on the side. So that'll lead us into the next question of who's going to do these things. And I find that super interesting because there are sort of three levels of how we address this challenge at the moment. Everyone talks about we struggle to get new people into the industry. And of course that is a problem. The new people that do join the industry tend to be digitally literate. So we now have people who can code, do understand problem solving, but they don't know how to build buildings. Challenge. We have another challenge around that people don't tend to address as much, and it's in about 10 years' time, 25% of the industry retires. So what we're going to do is we're going to see a whole lot of knowledge go out the door, right? So how do we address that? So we need to be better at knowledge capture. And that's something that we're not great at as an industry at the moment.
And this is a major challenge, actually.
Yeah, so maybe if we're not good at retaining people, we should be great at retaining information. Which leads us down the road of something else that we need to start looking at. And that's around how do we have better systems of record? Once we have better systems of record, then we can look at how do we interact with things. Better systems of engagement. Once we have systems of record and systems of engagement, then people can start turning the machines on and looking at how we can have systems of autonomy.
Actually, digitization is all about engagement. So the engagement is increasing as you go within the digitization. And you raised a point, which is, in my opinion, a very important point, which is the ownership and the retaining of such information. I've seen in my career many professionals have kept this information, and when they left their companies, they've taken the experience with them. So the companies ending up after finishing all of those projects or all of those trends that they have established, they have nothing actually, or have a little bit of it.
Yep.
So yes, you're right, digital transformation is essential. However, I do believe that it's also two-edged sword if it's not managed properly.
Absolutely.
you will just feed wrong information and you will get fancy dashboards and people will end up having wrong decisions.
I think that that's a fantastic point to make. And as I said, there are sort of three streams to the people in the industry.
And I think-
I absolutely love the fact that we're now seeing people join the industry from a computer science background. So what we're starting to see there, that then means that we have people that don't understand how to build buildings as well. I sit next to a data scientist, and I sort of refer to him as my co-pilot. And the problem-solving skills from people that come from different industries is phenomenal. What we will start to see more of is automated co-pilots. So actually, in November, when Microsoft turns on Copilot, we'll have a completely different way of looking at our day-to-day operations. The thing that really interests me is when the thought of seeing what my co-pilot, the data scientist, will be able to do when he gets his hands on proper co-pilots. Sorry, I
just want to go, that's okay. I just want to go back on your point. I think you made a good point about fostering a culture of learning in the organisation. And I think, over the last few years, the landscape is vastly different. The workplace is vastly different to what it was before. And I think it's no longer I would like maybe some training. It's an absolute essential now to get all employees involved in that process. But I think one cap doesn't really fit all. And that's what we found when working with different teams. People have different cultures, different backgrounds, different languages, different abilities, and different personal experiences. And you put all of those into the mix. And I think it's really important to have a proper change management plan and a training plan that's constantly evolving to ensure that you're still meeting your targets and objectives, but your employees are actively participating in part of that solution. I think this is so important to harness that culture.
Yeah, and the world of training's changed as well. So, I mean, you can move between should we build libraries or give people a mobile phone. I mean, we are at that point. Sitting in classrooms doing 3-day software training, I think the generation which is joining the industry learns in a completely different way.
True.
And that's something that we have to completely acknowledge. So I think that what we need to be a lot better at is doing this, right? So I think we need to be good at moving chairs around, right? So sit people with certain knowledge next to other people with different knowledge, right? And get that sort of cross-fertilization, it says that fertilization going.
So Martin, jumping right from people into AI, Stephanie, how do we use AI and big data to machine learning and all of these so far in the future? How do we do that to manage standalone assets, infrastructure, mega projects? How do we make all of this sustainable? Because we can have something that we're trying to implement and there goes our BIM manager out of the business and we lose that knowledge. How do we go into the future? How do we implement the AI and the big data and all of these things into?
I like this question, and I'll tell you why. Because all of these topics that you mentioned around machine learning, around AI, all have a common denominator, which is data, right? So data is what really makes us efficient. So I don't think there's no shortage of data, basically, in construction. We have so many sources of data, like IoT sensors, like project management solutions that help, like geospatial data that can be collected. I think the real challenge in terms of data is having everything collected in one place and being able to link all of this data together and to consolidate the data. I think this is what the real challenge is for construction industries. Because once this is established, once this is done, companies will be able to have a good visibility on everything that's happening, and it would help them in terms of taking more informed decisions in different kind of topics, specifically around sustainability, for example. Because let's say in terms of once you have that data, you're able to, implementing these digital solutions will help us to kind of go away from paper-based kind of processes, right? So lots of paper usage will go down drastically, so there's no need for any kind of document sitting around in offices anymore. That's one thing in terms of being sustainable. Another one is traveling, for example. Like now, the world being so global and being able to kind of travel so easily from one project to another, from one place to another, if construction professionals or construction leaders have all the data and they can access all of that data in one place at any time, they wouldn't need to travel so much. So that's another way of being more proactive from a sustainability perspective. Another one is the optimization of resource allocation, for example. We would know exactly where to allocate the resources and not underestimate or overestimate. So basically all of this, combining all of this data together would help us be more proactive and being more sustainable when we achieve our projects.
If you allow me, I do believe this is a brilliant point, because optimizing such platforms together, I think, is the current challenge that we are having. There are lots of platform providers in the market, and the industry is having a lot of information, as you said, and to manage the more information, it's becoming harder to manage. Now, the challenge that I'm really seeing, and as a professional in this field, is to integrate all those platforms seamlessly together without any kind of using too many bridges like Excel or like Power BI or whatever, to have a seamlessly platform having all such items talking together and can be easily accessed without having to create a lot of IT work in between.
Does that come down to input and output? The data that you're putting in on all platforms need to be put in the same way, it needs to be processed in the same way, and it needs to come out. So there's so many controls that you have to have across these platforms.
This actually will increase the control points, because the more data people are starting to put into the system, the more danger you will have of making a wrong decision. Because in the end, the higher management and the chairmen and the board are seeing beautiful dashboards reflecting a lot of work and a lot of data, and they will rely on such information and they will trust it. So if we are not sure and we don't have the proper quality control upon such information, we will make a lot of wrong decisions. So this is in my opinion, it's a two-edged sword. Digitization and digital revolution, it's a brilliant thing we are living, and I'm very excited about it. A lot of people are excited, but I'm also worried. I'm having this mixed emotion about it, and it should be controlled. And I think maybe this is a point that every one of us is having in our minds, is AI and what could it bring to us and all of that. So
I think that what we need to do is you've got that, we're going to have tons of data, okay? We need to process that into information. Ultimately, that needs to process into wisdom, right? So that's the thing that allows you to make informed decisions. And we're not, this is a journey that everybody needs to go on, right? It's not something that's going to happen tomorrow.
Of course.
exactly.
And also, like this
will take a lot of time.
Can be manipulated as well. So we just need to be sort of mindful of what problem are we trying to solve. Like, what is the wisdom at the end of the journey, like, that we're trying to get to?
And just to give some background, Mr. Sami Olabi is the Director of Project Management, Project Controls, Claims and Disputes for OPMS Consult. And he has spent his life on site, first starting out as a site engineer, a planner, site engineer again. So he knows about program and he knows about the expectations and the outputs and the delivery of projects. Years and years of experience on that. And then on Stephanie here is the Enterprise Account Executive for Procore Technologies, with understanding of Primavera and Oracle on how to integrate those systems. And this is exactly what Mr. Sami just said. I'm a contractor. I use the software and I use the tools that are easy to use and easy to implement and easy to teach. So the siloed software that we have at the moment, these platforms are absolutely fantastic, but it's to get them to talk to each other where we're not falling flat, maybe it's just taking a little bit longer to learn. It exists. It's going to take some trial and error, implemented on one project, onto the next one, implemented on one contract, specified on one thing, and see what works and goes on. On to the next question then. leveraging BIM, digital twins, and the cloud and digital workflows to drastically improve project stakeholder collaboration and visualization to deliver better projects and minimize time wastage and costly mistakes. And I want to address this question to Ahmed Balawi, who is the Design and Engineering Manager for ECC. 16, 17 years with Arab Tech as Design Manager.
Yes.
Short stint with D1 Architects and then back into contracting again.
I was privileged to go across the whole life cycle of an asset, and actually that gave me a lot of visibility. Starting my life in a construction, to be honest, has limited my vision about what's going on. But when I've moved to more into design and the relation with the clients, I was able to form a big picture about what is going on. And with that all experience is that I just want to recap all this discussion, and definitely I agree with our colleagues here, is that things always start with the end of mind. Now, digitization, revolution of technological revolution it's inevitable, it's going to happen. Now the question is how we can maximize the benefit rather than just going into a chaos of trial and error. Now, definitely we are at a disruptive stage. The advantage of this disruption is that there are benefits, pros and cons. If we know exactly where we are going to get, what do we need to do, we know how to start. Now, it's good to aim big, but we need to have proper, well-thought steps. And the key word here is that data. Currently, we have a problem with the data. Before we coming into AI and so on, the basic concept, data. We have a lot of data, and I'm the guy who believes that technology is there. There are a lot of brilliant resources right now. They can fill the gap of technology, but the wisdom that we need to get these people in to do proper informed decisions is not yet there. Now, we are talking about two types of data, whether it's structured or non-structured. This is the key in order to get proper future. Now, let us consider that the AI is as a kid, as child. The more we get proper data, we nurture this in order to get informed decision. This is the wisdom that we need to transfer so we get better future. I loved really the presentation done by Juan, and that is something really is what we are looking for. Industry 4.0 is more about all connected environment. How we get this connection. There are a lot of initiatives, but unfortunately what I can see so far is that all these initiatives are the disruption that is not yet settled to get the proper direction. It's still fragmented. The way that we generate data every day, it's so chaotic sometimes that we don't get benefit out of it.
Absolutely.
Now, this is the real key word. If we want to depend more on data for future informative decisions, it is today that we need to curate data properly. Despite that BIM is there since, I could say that more than 13 years so far, yet proper data structure is not there. The way that we are talking about single source of truth, interoperability across platforms, it's there, but it's not yet managed properly through governance. We need to have, like as contracts, as regulations, to structure the way we generate data to benefit from it in the future. So far, unfortunately, we are just drifting, and it's individual efforts to make things happen. That is what we are looking for and to see in the future, because we need to transfer all of this legacy for a better future. What we have seen from Juan is that if we collect this data, we would reach to a design that achieves the maximum comfort of living. We could see, and we have to see a bright future of what we are getting from AI and so on. The beauty of all these disruptions is that we are not going to lose our jobs. We are going to create a better future. The beauty of life, we lose some part of the jobs, and life creates more, new. But it's the nature of life that who doesn't evolve loses.
Exactly. I remember back in the early 90s where the transformation between CAD, paper CAD and Autodesk, it was a thing at that time. A lot of people resisted that. And then again, 2007, 2008, when in Dubai the BIM started to be taking place a lot, and there was a lot of resistance. So I think we are now in a much maybe bigger funnel, as Ahmed said, and I'm excited about the future, but we need to have those kind of codes and regulations. We need to try to collaborate all of those things together in a more formal kind of way, because it's going to happen in every single industry. So looking at it from a critical thinking way, rather than criticizing, I think we are on the track. However, there is a lot of homework to be done. We still have a lot of miles to walk, but we are doing it, and Dubai, I think, is a great place to do that.
And going a bit technically on the issue of generating data, currently we are using multiple platforms to generate different types of data. What we have seen right now is that at a higher level of governance of processes and workflows, like us, we are in ECC, we are ISO certified for BIM 19650, and we've been there for the past 3 years. But what I've been looking for to see more in the future, if we are talking about data generation and curation, is that we need standards to govern the way we generate data. Now, what I like one of the things that I have seen really a successful implementation of data is the approach of Red Sea. They knew exactly what's there in the end of mind, and they have dictated the way that all stakeholders, they generate their data. So we have to think of starting governing and dictating the way that each person or each entity or whatever stakeholder, they should have a clear strategy and a clear data generation structure. If we achieve this, definitely we are laying a very smooth road for the future and technology to come even faster than it's going right now. This is the really key word. This is the real start. It is not it's not a small task, definitely. It's something really big. But the moment we achieve this, that is the moment that, believe me, the future is here. It will be even beyond our imagination. AI, all these kind of automations, they will become extremely effective in no time.
I think that's a very valid point, Alison.
Yeah, I think you've made a really good point there about standards. I think a lot of organisations who we work with they jump straight into technology without necessarily having a strategy or a technology plan. And they think that this technology is going to solve all their problems on day one. But you need to really have a plan for that strategy way before you actually implement. I mean, there's been a lot of companies who've invested a lot of money in picking the right software, but they didn't plan it, and then it was a bit of a failure because they couldn't get the teams on board with it, and it got canned in the end, which is obviously these technologies are great tools, they're really powerful, but you do need to plan and have a strategy for your company, I believe, before you jump, straight in. And I think you don't necessarily have to have the greatest technology, digital system, or whatever it is. You can start small. Maybe it's a 3D scanner on site. Maybe it's an iPad doing snagging. But you don't have to take it all in at once. And I think this is sometimes
this is triggered
people think
actually.
they have to go.
It's a brilliant point, and it triggered, maybe I rephrase it in a different, from my perspective, the culture. Changing the culture in every company to adopt and absorb such trends is maybe what we have to think about. So we get sometimes resistance from our own structure. So this is also, I think, in a way or another, complement what you have said right now. So culture, acceptance of such change is really very important. So we have to put the right people in the right place in order to start adopting that and getting people to familiarize with such new technologies we are trying to introduce in any project or in any company. if you know what I mean.
And
I think
that goes back basically to the fear of them adopting that new
Exactly.
technology, because I mean, for them it's like maybe they're not familiar with new technologies,
Exactly.
and they might think that that would be additional task for them to work on and make complicate things. So I completely agree in terms of having that cultural mentality and having that resistance internally, and that goes back to the point of involving everyone and all of the workforce into that digital transition, making sure that maybe adding them to that decision-making process, involving them at the beginning so that they know what they're going to be going through, and that's what's going to drive, I think, more adoption.
I completely agree. I think that sometimes the initiatives, sometimes we don't actually understand why we're running an initiative. You run an initiative to change a state. If we're not inclusive with those initiatives, then people will never buy into them, when they will never become a system, right?
True.
So you change a broken state with an initiative, and then you lock in solutions with the system. It's very difficult to get people on the bus, right, when it's a system, because you'll be resistant to it. If you've been included in changing the state, then the system just becomes
exactly. If they don't get the 100%, if they don't get the proper trainings to be able to use these systems, if they're not included, I mean, all of this would affect the way that they're going to adopt the solution later on. And if they're not easy to use, so technologies are not necessarily easy to use. So if they're not easy to use, they're not going to use it, which would be a complete waste of money at the end of the day.
And I think that just echoes back into what everybody said, that, like, the silo piece, right?
True.
So, and it was interesting, the question was about BIM, and I scratch my head about BIM sometimes, if I'm honest.
I think they also call it procedural justice, and knowing what's fair and true. I think in psychology that's the term they use for it. And employees want to feel that it's fair, and that they've been involved.
So I often think that a good test for adoption is nobody speaks about it anymore. Like, we don't speak about steam power, for example, right? So if we look at how well do we think that BIM was adopted, right? It's been around for 12 years. Software's been around for 20 years. We still talk about it, right? It's still not a thing, right? It never got adopted properly.
Yeah, it's true.
So the day that nobody talks about it anymore, we can move on to something else, right? We know we've had true adoption of that process. The reason that I don't think it's been truly adopted is I don't think it got looked into as well as it should have been. So we're not going back saying, it's not quite working. We need to fix something.
You know what? The problem of what's happening right now with BIM is that it has been oversold, because it's been, promoted as the magic that's going to make everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is actually, and this is the problem right now with every software and platform that we are getting. We are overpromised, and we are not realistic into our expectation, and unfortunately, people want to sell. So they overpromise us. But I like in 2009, 2008, the key word for the success BIM implementation was simple. It's just, please, I remember that word being advised, like, please set the expectation clearly. And the success continued into a direction where we've aligned the basic science and we got the suited technology. Sometimes when we adopt technology to make it successful, we change everything unnecessarily to suit technology, and that destroys everything. And we just want to make it happen in whatever, just make it happen. The problem right now is that there are young generation that technology savvy. They want to make things happen, but they don't have the basic and the knowledge needed of the practice that we need to do. So we come up into problems, obstacles, we don't know how to tackle them. But if we align the technology to the need, we find the right tool, things get smooth, gets better. Currently, this is the challenge what we are facing. And I say that we are now in a stage of having a generation, maybe in a couple of years, that they would have formulated the technical knowledge skill needed with their rich background in technology and understanding it, and that will create the second movement of technology adoption. I would always say that basic knowledge of engineering, design, methods of construction and technologies, lean, updating our processes and workflows to be ready for the future and get the right platform is what makes things simple.
I completely agree with that one. But one thing that we've got to be completely mindful of is the difference between digitize and digitalize. So you can't just take a traditional process and shoehorn it into a technology, because we see that waste in everything we do. So we need to sit down and be like, what problem am I trying to solve? I think I've said that 10 times. So what problem am I trying to solve? And do our existing processes support that outcome? If they don't, we've got some thinking to do, right? Because maybe the process worked a few years ago.
Yes, it's
But
not
it doesn't work
applicable.
when it's supported by today's technology.
So I think
It's a
that
live
leads us into our next question, Sami. How do we take advantage of the big data that we have to make engineering decisions going forward, and how are we doing it at the moment?
Actually, as you said, the process and procedure should be dealt with in a way that it's a live thing happening, and it's a continuous process being updated regularly in order to cope up with what's happening. So putting a proper process and proper personnel to take care of such process and control it, it's just more than some paper on a server or something. It's a very important thing. So if this answers the question, taking this advantage of such information is really important, and controlling such thing and having the proper process and procedure and some kind of reference that we always have to refer to, continuously updating such process to cope up with the technologies. This is really a very challenging and doable thing in any kind of company with this kind of sector and other sectors.
On to the next question as well.
Yeah.
Tracking construction progress and preventing rework with drones, 3D scanning, and photogrammetry.
Yeah,
How much of that is happening on site, and how much of it's still analog?
It's a very good point, actually, because the most important thing happening in any project is progress. Progress is the things that will tell us are we on track or not. And this is where a lot of games are being played. So I think a picture could say 1,000 words. However, a picture only is not enough. I will need a lot of integration into that picture in order to give the right information. I will just speak now. We've been talking for half an hour, generally speaking, but I will give some specific maybe examples. Taking Expo, for example. Expo, we all know the criticality of Expo. It was a strategic project. Completion of such project and handing over on time is not under any question. It should be completed on time. That specific date of end of September and October was a deadly critical thing for everybody. And everybody was heated up. I was appointed on one of the projects with the Italian pavilion. And I was actually a third party. My duty was to try to create a digital twin of the progress on site and link it with a proper strategic completion program. And then tell, are we really able to complete on time or not? It reached a point that on a weekly basis, we used to scan the whole project, and on every single wall of the pavilion, it was a small pavilion, but lots of interfaces in it. There are lots of sponsors, like Bugatti and many major brands, Italian brands, having a lot of embedments. And everybody was blaming the contractor at that time. That contractor is the main reason for the delay. When I was appointed there and we started mapping all of that, such things, and sending to the Italian counselor such tours so he can go through the site himself and check on every single room, where is the program, where are we, what's happening there, and what is the real issue, things started to evolve. So we knew at that point that the real problem was coordinating the sponsor requirements ahead of the time. So this is just an example. So creating a digital twin, integrated, not just a picture, integrated with programs, live matrix, having data quantities. This is a real deal breaker in my opinion.
If you allow me quickly on this, because I think we are going to run out of time, the issue of the success of such implementation, it depends on two things. The nature of projects and which dictates the requirement. And the real success, it depends on understanding the prerequisite for the implementation of such systems. Sometimes, you know, we come up into a technology and we are, let's say, more into implementing it, but we are overwhelmed when start the actual implementation. We don't know exactly what is required to make it happen. So if you address the drones, you've addressed, you know, all these capturing systems and so on. If you don't have the base ready, if you have a proper data, if you don't have proper models, if you don't have all your objectives are clear, you will end up of not achieving anything. This is why, like, for such implementation, generally, the nature of projects and the stakeholders within the project are the ones that they dictate the success, because you would have the right resources from the beginning, you know how, you have the know-how, and you can just get things into a place properly. But sometimes, unfortunately, we jump into technology, we buy without planning, we end up of not using. And I came across similar in this in my career, without just, okay, we found something, it was sold, so found what to do with it. Some technologies are not workable in some certain areas. That is something also we have to be practical of it. That's one of the major issues that we need to think about it. What, how do we have all the needed to make it possible or not?
So what we're just, I agree with, I mean, having people using these different technologies, having all this technology put together. What we find successful is companies who have dedicated you know, departments, like digital transformation departments, or digital transformation resources, like digital transformation resources officers or directors that actually do just that. So they focus on rolling it out to the whole organization, and they would internally kind of collaborate with the rest of the organization to put things in place.
Which is going back to culture.
I think you have to address this also.
That's a good point, actually. Yes, it is true.
So I find that interesting because I see these roles as being temporary.
Thank you.
So, I'll do it again. So I tend to talk a lot about making myself redundant. And if I was good at the implementation or adoption, then my role would need to change into something else. Having these static roles around digitization, I think that probably needs to get rethought, and I think that the roles probably need to be town-bound around success. What did you change? Fine. And then also the breaking down of silos. I found that the whole thing of sort of like a supertanker and a speedboat, right? So you're always going to have like a big organization sort of going at a certain rate of knots, but you need some people sort of going out front and doing some innovation, that type of work. But you've got to make sure that that innovation tumbles back down into the organization. Because if it's not, it's just people operating in a lab, not affecting the bottom line of the business, and you'll soon find that your revenue stream for funding that innovation dries up because there's only one place where that comes from, and it's the project. So we have to be very sort of mindful about, if we do spin up sort of a center of excellence or whatever it is, then what's its goals and what's its timeline before it needs to then extend those goals and tumble that knowledge down into the actual core business. Because we need to have technology at the core of decision making and not have technology bolted on the edge of, just stop optimizing traditional is basically what I'm trying to say.
True.
I really want to steer the conversation to the crowd for questions. But on that, I just want to close with Alison on that, because the trend that I'm seeing here is we have the skill in our teams, but our people are a problem because we tend to either make them experts, and then they become almost irrelevant if they don't keep evolving themselves. We have a problem with the data, the way that the data is coming in and going out and being read across, and training of people. So Alison, you train people from the top down. How do you find training different levels, people in this region? What can we take on from today as a learning? How do we implement it in our companies going forward?
Yeah, I think from training different backgrounds and different teams, I think, as I said earlier, that a training plan is really essential, I think, and that's constantly reviewed. I think it's also important to identify skills gaps in the organisation and see whether there's any champions for specific technologies, because we find when we're with project teams, there's some individuals who are not in the technically qualified department because they're doing another job. And when we start implementing software, we suddenly find that they're really, experts at this and it's their passion. So I think, in the organisations, there might be people who are really passionate about something that you don't necessarily know about until you actually speak to your staff and engage them in the process. Then you start to find that there are people who could do other jobs and, to quality champion, to IT champion. I think this is really important.
That's a major role. This is the leadership. So we're going back to leadership skills now.
Absolutely.
How to adopt the resources that I have and give them this push of passion so they can get all of this passion out of them. So this is a brilliant point, actually.
Yeah, we also work in an industry that employs natural problem solvers, right? Let's be honest about it. So we need to speak a lot more to the people where the work gets done, right? So if there's a problem, how are you solving it? And that's super important, that the training is relevant to that problem criteria.
Okay, so I like that very much. Oh, sorry.
If I can just add one thing, I think continuous development or investment in developing the existing, it's not only, I think it's not only for existing employees, but also for the new ones having trainings, like data literacy has to be refreshed all the time. But also I think it has to be a prerequisite when we are trying to hire new people. So it has to be kind of look at what kind of gaps we need to fill, etc. So I think just putting it as a prerequisite when we get new people on board would kind of help in terms of having that retention if people are leaving or their right skills, etc.
I agree.
I think that's an amazing point, that sometimes if you look at how we recruit, that can also get balanced with how we train, right? Because sometimes you may have a recruitment problem rather than a training problem.
I think just to mirror really what all my fellow panelists are saying, is that it really does start, I think, from the top down.
Absolutely.
And we find this, if there's no support from the top, then, or if the support from the top is inconsistent, this is one of the biggest finds as well, is there may be a message one day, but a different message to the employees the next, depending on the, today's firefighting or objective. So I think it's really important that you have a strong leadership and that you're consistent in your approach. I think it's like children, they can look at the gaps between the mum and the dad sometimes and try to worm their way around. And I think, it can be the same. So I think you just have to really be consistent in your message to get results. Yeah.
That's good. I think that's a good takeaway. Also, CEOs, managers, department heads, lead from the top.
And
questions
indeed, yes. And in fact, Jim, in fact, we have all of those present here, CEOs, managers, department heads. We've got time for 3 powerful audience questions.
Correct.
Let's take 3 questions. I'm sure you must have many questions. I'll take the first 3 only, please. Fire away. Who has a question for our wonderful panel?
I'm going to ask you one question. There are a lot of software out there, a lot of different softwares out there. And I've noticed that a lot of these softwares don't talk to each other. Do you see that as a problem in the implementation of BIM and in digitization?
Actually, it is a problem. Having those softwares talking to each other is a real hurdle and obstacle we are facing now. And as Ahmed said a while ago, we get a lot of promises. We raise our expectations. We think that everything is just perfect. However, when you get to real situation, you will find out differently. So maybe the solution is not only in the software developers, because they have their own politics, their own budget, they have their own restraints and constraints. I think the solution for that, the mentality of the organizational structure should change to include in each company IT development, their own softwares. Maybe they can start, the market, we can start putting pressure on the market to release the APIs. Things like that should happen. So it will start to happen when such companies are having their own IT developers, this experienced IT developers, not just creating portals, no, programming and going into the small bits of the pieces of the things that integrate those aspects together. And along with that, a research and development department, which should always look what we need and what kind of people we need to hire. So this is connecting all the points together.
I think we're getting there. We're getting there in the sense that there are a lot of different solutions, different technologies that do different things. Eventually, companies need to start, there's this idea of platform. Companies need to start having all of these different technologies talk to each other. And we can see that there are platforms with open APIs that try to be flexible for their customers to be able to kind of be able to integrate and try to get to consolidate
but
their
the big
data.
players are not. The big players are not doing it. You understand me? A lot of people are giving this API.
And we can talk about it. But we are getting there. It's going to take but we are getting there, and there are a lot of integrations that can be done. It's just going into the details of what the companies really want to do and how they want to do it, and this is how the providers can help, or the right partner can help.
I'm allowed to give an example. Oracle Primavera, it's in every single contract in the United Arab Emirates.
Correct.
It is maybe one of the most difficult software to penetrate. I always need Excel. I always need some kind of a bridge. Everything. This is a question I ask every company coming and offering something to do. Do you have integration, direct, seamless integration with Primavera? And that's when I thought I will do it myself. So I started working on something now. I'm trying to develop. I'm very excited about it. I'm still in the making. But in the end, I reached the conclusion that I have to do something about it myself, maybe, to break such kind of constraints and start to have a seamless, realistic, and very easy to do program interface with all other aspects of big modules like BIM, like any other software that we need to integrate.
So definitely a question worth asking, and an answer not answered yet.
And there was a question from the
I believe
gentleman.
the answer is yes.
Question from the gentleman just here in blue. I know you had your hand up for a question earlier, sir. You wanted to ask a question. I saw you earlier. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Emmanuel Bogris, Managing Director from EB Architects. It's a Greek company specializing in BIM integration in architectural engineering and innovation in the way we apply it. So I have a question for Mr. Balawi. We talk so much about all the benefits that BIM brings to the industry, sometimes over-focusing in I, information, and neglecting B. So based on your experience, have you seen all this progress, all these benefits being reflected in the actual construction documentation that is brought to the construction site? Or do you believe that there is still room for improvement and of applying some innovative things? Like, I will give you an example. In our construction documents, we use these QR codes that next to the construction drawings that do two things, for example, more, but I will use two examples. Sometimes they can bring the subcontractor inside the room so he can have an immersive access to what he's going to build. And another thing, the same QR code will bring the stakeholders to a database related to what they see in the drawings. And the concept behind this is that we are assisting the ecosystem of the project to get more familiar to what is the product of what we do as BIM experts, without asking them to go deep to the to learning the tools, to getting more familiar with the technology when they are supposed to be focusing in something that is not exactly related and dependent on this. Please.
Okay, I think the issue was that you have to have one question, but you have flooded us of a lot. So, do we see a value added of implementing BIM from design to construction to operation? Definitely it's there. We've seen it, we are seeing it every day. The kind of level of quality of design that we are receiving that's happening on BIM, and it's moved to the next stage of shop drawings and even taking it further to the site. And building on top of it, there are several technologies that based on that. So yes, added value is shown every day. As long as we get really the whole stakeholders from the early stage to the handing over, we build on everybody's information, we don't recreate, the added value goes even bigger. Now, the next question is that when you said that there is a room of improvement, believe me, what we see right now is just only fraction of what we are going to see in the future. So the room of improvement is going to happen there. We have you've spoken about QR codes. We have used that for several construction management tools. We have used it for laser scanning. We have used it and will be used it for a lot of technologies that's going to be embedded more into this. Even if you go for other platforms that they are even looking at geospatial location that you link or your data to. So everything is moving, yes. Unfortunately, we would have expected a lot of improvement since we started 10, 15 years ago, and we should have really achieved much. The key word of this success really to unfold the full potential of information and technology is that structured data, governance, collaboration. We hope to see in the future, in the coming near future, a standard that dictates the information generation protocols. If this happens, whatever you are looking for is going to be very, very smooth. So technology is there, improvement definitely it's going to happen even more. I believe that with all this startups, with all these ideas that becoming even easy. Before, if you want to set up a business, it was a hustle, but nowadays, an idea can make a person billionaire.
Exactly, an idea and a credit card, and you can spin up a cloud server and off we go, right? So in the past, that used to be a whole different sort of
And we can
concept.
take, so sorry to interrupt. I liked your point, by the way, about a standard for information generation. Let's make that a thread moving forward. It's a very interesting point, sir. Very interesting point. I can take one more question very quickly, please. We promised 3 questions. I can take one more. Anyone else with a question? Gentleman just here, end of row, sir.
Yeah. Hello. Thank you for the discussion. It was very informative. I loved specifically Martin's point about when we stop talking about BIM, we'll know that it's been truly adopted. And I've loved every part of the discussion till the last bit where you said the approach should be from the top down. I respectfully disagree with that because executives, managers, everyone in the room here basically rarely, if ever, uses softwares themselves. It's usually the people working under them in their departments, in their companies. So my question to Martin is perhaps the industry should start thinking about adopting a bottom-up approach to ensure that in the end we get to the level of adoption that is expected, has been expected for many years now, but never really got there.
I guess this question's for me. I understand what you're saying as well, but we work with many organisations also where if the support of the senior management, and it's not saying that you have to be personally responsible for using the system, of course not, but when it comes to strategy and moving the organisation forward, the organisation has to have support from the top. We've seen a number of companies through consultation where they've lost a lot of money, time, resources, and they don't understand why. And it's because they're not involved in that in what's happening down below. And I think it's so important that they do understand how it's operating, even if you're not directly involved, but it is led from the top, I feel. But that's just an opinion that I have through experience, but obviously it might be different in your organization.
The whole hierarchy should be involved, actually. So this is a very effective point. Everybody in the company should be involved in such, from the higher end until the small user. So it's a very important thing to get these softwares integrated among all types of users in the company. So if this answers your collaboration.
Thank you very much indeed.